Coping skills is something that is very helpful in any situation, regardless of what stage or what experience you're having, whether you are angry or resentful, feeling guilt, having depression or sadness, or even in denial. Coping skills is a great way of handling things. And so everyone has different perceptions of coping skills. So coping skills are basically things that help you feel better. Coping skills are things that help you get to a healthy place, a healthier place, mentally and emotionally. So there's two different types of coping skills. There's healthy and unhealthy. So for example, let's say somebody gets really mad and angry. They pick up a chair and throw it at someone's head. Is that healthy or unhealthy? If you said it's unhealthy, you're absolutely right. It is considered unhealthy. Yes, the person gets the anger out, they feel better, but it's unhealthy because you're harming another person. Same situation, somebody gets mad and angry and they decide to go for a walk and listen to music. Do you think that is healthy or unhealthy? If you said that is healthy, then you're right. That is healthy. You're getting the anger out by going for a walk, you're listening to music, so you're also relaxing as well. So for the next few minutes, we're going to talk about how some coping skills, some healthy coping skills that you can use to kind of work through some of your grief. So this is a worksheet that I do with quite a few people. So I'll show it to you guys. So you'll see that there's 4 boxes here. So in the top box, it says this works up here, this works. And then you'll see that this does not work. And then at the bottom, this sometimes works and I've never tried. And so I want to encourage you to create something similar to this. Again, this works, this doesn't work, this sometimes work, I've never tried. And so the benefit of this is that it helps you kind of break down those healthy coping skills, and it also gives you quick access to them, because sometimes we could be feeling depressed. And when we're feeling depressed, it's hard for us to think, what is a coping skill I can do right now? It's very challenging to think that. But if we have a list, we can easily go to that list and say, all right, I can do this right now, or I can do that. And so this doesn't work. The reason why I encourage people to write down the things that don't work, because we don't repeat ourselves. So for example, journaling. Sometimes journaling is very beneficial to some people. To where others are like, journaling, it doesn't do it for me. It doesn't help me to feel better. I actually feel worse when I journal. Actually, I feel more sad or more angry when I journal. So you have to figure out what's the good fit for you. And the last one is I've never tried. And so these are the things that maybe you've heard friends or family members say. These are the things that maybe you've seen on TV or maybe you've read about, but you yourself haven't tried. And so it's important that you write those things down as well. So that way, when something pops up, let's say you become agitated, you can go to one of those things that you've never tried to see if it's a good fit for you. And you might be surprised, certain things might be a good fit. So let's go ahead and dive into specific coping skills that can be helpful and beneficial. So one of them is taking a mindful walk in nature. So many times when we're feeling sad or depressed, it's because we are thinking about things in the past, thinking about how we might miss someone, miss access to someone. When we're feeling anxious, it's more future oriented. We're thinking about what if this happens? What if that happens? What if because this person's died, I now no longer have access to this? What if I end up losing out on this opportunity? So think about being in the present moment, because our brain needs a break sometimes. It really does. And so being in the present moment gives our brain a break. And being in nature is something that's beneficial to some people. Some people are like, I don't really like nature. Perfectly fine. Another coping skill is to sit out in the sun for about 10 minutes. Sitting out in the sun can be helpful, as long as you don't have any medical conditions. It can be very helpful to get that sunlight on us. A few more. Actually, there's a long list of coping skills. Another example is listening to your favorite music. I know some people that do dance parties in their home, an individual dance party, or maybe them and their children. That's a fun one to do with children who might be feeling sad or grieving. Having a dance party with them. Another example is talking to a supportive friend. Again, going back to that support system, it is so crucial to have a good support system. Another one is creating an art piece that shows your experience. Some people create their most magnificent art pieces during moments of grief, during challenging times, during the darkest times of their life. They create some amazing pieces that are most memorable. So I want to encourage you to create a piece, whether it is painting or drawing or charcoal, whatever your go-to is. I want to encourage you to do that. And if you don't have a go-to, it might be a good time to explore. Another example is donating to that person's favorite nonprofit organization. That's something that people do quite often when someone passes away and they think about that person of, man, I really miss that person. You know what? They would love for me to donate to this specific organization, and they donate $10, $20, $1,000. And it helps them to feel closer to that person. It brings more closeness. Another example is planting a tree in remembrance of that loved one. That's something that quite a few people do when they have land or they have access. They might plant a bush, or they might plant a rose bush, or they might plant a tree. So every time they go to that tree, they water that tree, they feel close to that person. Some people even talk to the tree to feel close to that person. A few more, cooking. Cooking the person's favorite dish can also help someone to feel closer to that loved one. Playing an instrument, that can be something that can be soothing, relaxing. Cleaning. Some people find cleaning to be a joy, to be a pleasure. And some people even see the way our home is, the cleanliness of our home, the structure of our home, is a direct correlation to where our mind is. So if our mind is cluttered, many times our home is cluttered. Some people see if our mind is cleared and at peace, then our home is usually cleared and at peace. So some people believe that. If you're one of those people who believe that, then I encourage you to clean an area of your home. If you notice that your mind is cluttered, try cleaning a space. Also kind of thinking about depression and cleaning our space. Sometimes depression can be so intense and so overwhelming, it's a challenge to even have the energy to clean. So I want to encourage you to do baby steps, do one step at a time. So it could be cleaning off the countertop. It could be cleaning off the dining room table. It could be cleaning off the bed. It could be putting a load of laundry into the washing machine. So I'm going to encourage you, find something small that you can do to help with starting that process of cleaning. Another thing people do is creating a memory box. Some people do collages. Some people do sketch pads where they put a lot of pictures and stories and different cards they may have gotten from the person. And some people do a memory box. That is a fun one. So what you do is you write down the memories, the fun memories that you have with the person. You have other family members do it, and you put it into this box. And you can decorate the box however you want. Some people put pictures of the person. Some people might, who might have a loved one that's a sports fanatic, they might put their team's logo on the box. And when the anniversary comes, or throughout the year, or when their birthday comes, they'll pull out the memory box and they'll read through those memories, and it brings them closer to that person. A few more, some people do this. They attend a workshop, they attend a webinar to learn more about grief, to learn more about the grieving process. And by doing that, it brings normalcy. It brings a deeper understanding of what they're going through. And that in itself can be healing for some people, knowing that, all right, at some point, if I'm feeling depressed, it's okay, as long as it's mild or moderate. But if it gets too severe depression, then I need to seek professional help. If it gets to certain places of moderate depression, I need to seek professional help. So by being aware of where you are and how grief looks, it can be so helpful and beneficial to know when to seek out professional help and when to realize, you know what, I'm doing pretty well managing my grief. Another example of mourning and can be a healthy coping skill is crying. I know some people are like, wait, crying? Yes, crying. Um, Going back to what some people say about coping skills and healthy things can become unhealthy if it's done out of moderation. So it's important that we do things in moderation. So crying can be healthy. It can be a relief for some people. It can be a release as well. And so what studies have shown is when people cry, our brain clicks in after about 20 minutes. Usually at the 20-minute mark, our brain will click in and we'll get distracted. So we might say, oh, I need to go to the store and do this. Or, oh, I never noticed how blue that shirt is. Or I forgot I need to take care of this. So our mind drifts for a moment. And when it drifts at that point, we can then decide, I want to go back to crying and mourning, or I want to go ahead and go and do something constructive or do something that needs to be done throughout my day. So crying can be healthy as long as it's done in moderation. If it's done out of moderation, such as crying for maybe an hour, 2 hours consistently with no breaks, it can become unhealthy. That's when people might experience physical ailments such as headaches, digestive problems. Some people even might get migraines. And so I want to encourage you to start being aware of how long am I crying for? Is it for 3 or 4 hours every night? Or is it about 20 minutes? Then my mind wanders and goes somewhere else. And then I might come back to crying. And again, crying can be very healthy as long as it's done in moderation. Another example is screaming into the pillow. I had one person that I knew, whenever he would get mad and angry, he would go outside and he would just yell to the top of his lungs. And that helped him to feel better. Of course, his neighbors were concerned, so they would check on him. But at the end of the day, it still helps him to feel better. So just in case you don't want to go outside and scream and scare your neighbors, screaming to the pillow can be helpful. Just in case you're mad at yourself, or mad at a higher power, or mad at the person who's passed away, mad at other things that you may think have contributed to the person passing away. I remember there's a friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, his father passed from cancer. And he had this anger, this deep-rooted anger towards cancer. And he would talk about just how much he hated cancer. And so that is an example of using screaming to the pillow to help get some of that anger out. Because again, if anger sits on us, if intense emotions sit on us, it can impact us negatively. It can cause us to have more physical ailments, such as ulcers, or even stomach or digestive concerns. Several more is reading something inspirational. There's quotes, there are books, there are mantras that people will turn to help them get to that place of acceptance, help them get to the place of peace, of not having that loved one around or not having access to the things that they used to have access to. Another thing is identifying future goals. Many times when we experience a loss, we lose sight of the future. We think about, man, I no longer have access to this. I can't do this. I can't do that. But when we stop for a moment and think, wait a minute, I do have access to certain goals. I can reach certain goals. That can cause us to have momentum and drive to start striving for things in the future. And that can slowly kind of get us out of depression as well. We still have a few more minutes. So a few more goals is for those of us who might be experiencing guilt, write yourself a forgiveness letter. That can be so helpful. You might have to write yourself a forgiveness letter multiple times, recognizing that, you know what, in that situation, I did the best I could. If I could have done better, I would have done better. But that was the best I could have done. Another example is writing a poem. So this is something that quite a few people do, is writing a poem about the person that they've lost, the person that's no longer here. And by doing this, it helps people to find out the positive things, the pros of having that person in their life. And it also allows them to acknowledge the cons, the losses, the things that they no longer have access to, the secondary losses that they're experiencing. And another example is when people think about the person's name. I've seen this quite often. They'll think about the person's name and they'll write a word that describes that person. So, for example, the person Amy, A-M-Y. I know there's a lot of different ways of spelling Amy, but for this sake, we'll say Amy, A-M-Y. Is a person that's passed away. And so for the A, they might say awesome. She was an awesome person. For M, they might say she was memorable because she had an amazing personality. And the Y, which could be young at heart, full of energy, full of excitement. And so that is something that people do to kind of commemorate that person and to feel closer to that person. Another example of a coping skill that people use to kind of work through grief is journaling. Journaling can be so helpful. And again, it's about you finding out the best fit for yourself. Because for some people, when they journal, again, it causes them to feel even more overwhelmed or even more angry. For other people, it's a release for them. It helps them to feel relief. It helps them to feel that intense emotion, but also go to the other end and that intense emotion slowly dwindles because they continue journaling. Also, some people, they will go back and reread the journal entries because they find that to be helpful, beneficial to see their progress. For other people, it's actually more detrimental to go back and reread some of the journal entries. So you have to figure out what's the best fit for you. Is it to reread, or maybe it's not to reread? Is it to journal, or maybe not journaling? A few more. This is a key one, a very, very important one. Acknowledging and validating your emotions. Acknowledging and validating your emotions. That in itself is a coping skill. What happens, unfortunately, is that when we experience grief, we push down those feelings. We push down the sadness. We push down the anger. We push down the resentment or the bargaining. We push it down. And what happens is that it manifests in some way, whether it's through physical ailments, we get more headaches, or it's more challenging for us to sleep. Or for some people, when they push it down, it at some points begins to bubble out. And when it bubbles out, it's usually not a very pretty sight. So for some people, it might be in the form of anger. So they're consistently bickering at people. They're consistently easily agitated. Other people, it comes out in the form of suicidal thoughts. So depression kind of overtakes their life. But at the beginning of grief, if we're able to slow down and simply acknowledge, in this moment, I'm feeling sad, and that's okay. In this moment, I'm feeling frustrated because my partner used to do this and now I have to do this. Now I have to manage the finances, and it's frustrating managing the finances. Or my partner used to do the cooking. Now that my partner's not here, I have to do the cooking for the children, and it is frustrating. Simply acknowledge that experience that you're having. And by acknowledging it, many times that emotion dwindles. It doesn't go away all the way, but it does dwindle a little bit. And that's what it's about. When we're going through the grieving process, it's about those intense emotions being less intense as time goes on. That's what it's about. It's not about getting rid of the sadness. It's not about getting rid of the anger. It's truly about learning how to live with the anger, learning how to manage and to control the anger, learning how to have the anger being at a 10 and coming down to maybe a 4 or a 5 of intensity. So a few more. Some people do is volunteer. Volunteering can be something that helps people who are grieving, because when we're grieving, sometimes we're kind of stuck in our emotions, and we think about ourselves, about how challenging it is for us to manage life. But when we start thinking about other people and volunteering and giving others support, many times it brings us out of that sadness. It brings us out of that anger. It brings us out of that grief. There's a book that I recommend, The How of Happiness. In that book, the doctor talks about the benefits of volunteering. And in the book, she also talks about how when it comes to happiness, 60% of it is based on factors we can't control, such as our circumstances, genetics, how we were raised. Those things we can't control. But 40% of our happiness is based on what we do. And so she talked about how volunteering is one of those things that we can do. Another thing she talked about is thankfulness, doing things that remind us of thankfulness. So some people might, going back to journaling, have a thankfulness journal. They write down the things that they're thankful for every night. Some people might say it out loud. Some people might take a moment first thing in the morning to identify the things that they're thankful about. So there's all kinds of ways you can embrace thankfulness. There's a depression group that I used to run several years ago, and at the end of our group, we would always do a coping skill, because we would talk about some really intense things. And the last thing I wanted them to do was to go out into the world with that same heaviness. So we do a coping skill before transitioning into the world. And I would let them choose the coping skill that they wanted to do. And time again, they kept choosing thankfulness. And so one day I asked them, why do you guys keep choosing thankfulness? There are so many more coping skills that we can do. So why do you guys keep choosing thankfulness? And some of the responses was astounding. One gentleman, he shared with me, because out there in the world is nothing but challenges, nothing but depression. So it's great to be able to have a moment where I can actually see a little bit of light in the world. And another person shared with me is that it helped them to set the tone for the rest of their day. And so I want to encourage you to embrace thankfulness. It can really go a long way. The last one I'll share with you is exercise. So again, different for everyone, but for some people, going for walks is a healthy way for them to work through their grief. Some people, they turn to kickboxing. Some people, they learn a certain specific type of dance. Others, they might do something physical oriented, such as taking a hot shower, a cold shower. Some people might go to needlework. Some people might do some woodwork. So there's all kinds of things that you can do that's physical oriented, not just exercise, but also some of those other things that I listed just now. So I want to encourage you to identify those coping skills that you already have, identify coping skills that sometimes work, such as music. Sometimes music can help us feel better. Other times, music can actually make us feel worse, depending on the genre. So be aware of what it is that works for you sometimes. And lastly, identify the things that you've never tried. Maybe there's some things that I mentioned today that you've never tried that you can try today. Or maybe, again, you've seen some things that other friends have done, or you've seen some things on TV, or you've read about certain things. I want to encourage you to find those coping skills that are a good fit for you.